It's very loud. Okay, so today is June 7th, 2025. And let us begin by we'll do one time the salutation to the Buddha. So, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. Okay, so good morning, everybody. And we're continuing now our reading of the Anguttara Nikaya, and we're in the Book of Sevens, sort of drawing into, well, still far to go, but certainly past the middle mark. And let me share the screen. So share the text. No, I can't find it. Okay. Ah, okay. Okay, is the text visible?
Larger, please.
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, so now we come to a few suttas which sort of belong together because they treat of the important topic of fetters and the underlying tendencies. So we find within the suttas that the Buddha has established different groups. So he's put the defilements together into different categories and enumerated the defilements that fall into each of these categories. And the categories are usually governed by a kind of, we call this a metaphorical idea. And so the metaphorical idea involved here in this sutta, let's increase. Is that of a fetter. And the Pali word, probably most of you know already, is the word samyojana. And so the word samyojana comes from the verbal root yuj, which means to join, to connect, and the prefix sam, which has the sense of together. So things that join together are sangyojanas. And this root yuj we see in English in the word yoke. So I don't have experience farming, but I guess a farmer who has some cattle especially in Asia where they have pairs of bulls to do the plowing, the farmer will put a yoke over the two bulls in order to join them together. And then with a whip, he'll drive the bulls across the field to plow the field. So that is a yoke. And from this, we get the word in Pali, sangyojana. And this word fetter is used because these are the things that tie us or bind us to the cycle of repeated birth and death, to samsara. And usually in the suttas, we find a list or a set of 10 fetters. So that is sort of the standard list, which has come down in the tradition. So for example, in a text like the Abhidhamma Sangaha, the comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma, we get the famous list, a full list of the 10 fetters. Yeah, well, actually, it's sort of reshuffled around in the comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma. So maybe it's not the best source to rely on. Okay, but what's interesting and a bit puzzling, in this sutta, in the Book of Sevens, we get 7 fetters. And we'll try to see how these relate to the standard list of 10 fetters. And we begin with a rather unusual item. And this is called here, it's called the fetter. I've translated it as the fetter of compliance. But let's see, the Pali word is anunaya sanyojana. So the word is anunaya, which uses the base of the word is naya, which has the meaning of leading, and anu, along with. So anunaya, the literal sense is leading along. You know that word?
Following or
following, yeah.
Following or mimicking.
Mimicking even, yeah. Yeah. What is the language? So you're a native Telugu speaker. Yeah. So it would be the same in Sanskrit. And it's a rather unusual because you could see from the other 6 fetters that they are common terms used in the suttas. And it's rather a puzzle. Why did the Buddha use this word anunaya, where it's not part of the standard list of fetters? And we're going to see that there will be the latent tendencies which correspond to the fetters. And in the latent tendencies, the Buddha uses, or the text uses, the more familiar term, which is the underlying tendency to sensual lust. So here, instead of using sensual lust, the text uses the word anunaya. I don't know why it should have chosen that word, and the word never really caught on in the tradition. It's always been replaced by sensual lust. Perhaps one could just conjecture that maybe the formulators of the text wanted to introduce an elegant variation, or maybe they were experimenting with different terms, which some of them were later abandoned in favor of a more standardized terminology. But anyway, we can infer from the list of the latent tendencies, the anusayas, that what is meant by the anunaya sangyojana, the fetter of compliance, is in fact the fetter of sensual lust. And probably the idea is that when you're essentially attracted to an object, then you go along with that object. You're led along by that object. And sort of the opposite of anunaya is the second fetter, which is translated as the fetter of aversion. And the Pali word for this is patiga. And so patiga comes from the stem of the word ga is from the verb hanati, which means to strike. And then pati gives the sense of maybe against. So you're striking against something. So that is patiga. So in English, I rendered it aversion. And so that is sort of the usual pattern in the working of the mind, is that if you like something, you sort of surrender to it, you comply with it, you flow along with it, you're attracted to it. And then you grasp onto it, and that becomes an upadana, clinging or grasping. And then the opposite of that, when you dislike something, you reject it. When you try to eliminate it, to eradicate it, and so you strike up against it, so then you experience aversion towards it. So those are, you could say, the two primary defiled emotional reactions to things: liking and disliking, compliance and aversion, grasping and rejection. And then come other fetters. And so we have the fetter of views, the fetter of doubt, the fetter of conceit, the fetter of lust for existence, and the fetter of ignorance. And the reason I've underlined two of these is to show or to see how we go from these 7 fetters to the usual list of 10 fetters. Oh, I made a note. It doesn't seem to be opening. Oh, I think I know how. No, that's to add in the missing fetter. Okay, so we have the fetter of views. Okay, now to get the 10 fetters, in the list of 10 fetters, the fetter of views gets divided into 2. Can anybody tell me what the 2 fetters are that emerge from the fetter of views amongst the 10 fetters?
Is it the fetter of self-view?
Say again?
Is it the fetter of self-view? Self-view?
Yeah. Okay, so one of them is what you're calling the self view, or you say identity view. It's in effect Sakaya Ditti. It's the view of a self existing in relation to the 5 aggregates. And what is the other fetter that's comprised under views?
Bhante, would that be under rituals and
Yeah, exactly.
that one?
It's called sometimes sila bhatta paramasa, sort of the wrong grasp of rules and rituals, or rituals and observances. So that is the way it's explained or understood. It is the view that by performing certain rituals, undertaking certain observances, particularly following certain of the extreme ascetic practices, one can gain enlightenment or liberation. And so that is considered a distorted view. So from the fetter of views, then we get those two fetters, the fetter of the view of a self and the fetter of the view of the wrong view of rites and observances. Okay, then we have the fetter of doubt, fetter of conceit are the same in the two lists. Then we have the fetter of lust for existence. And to get the list of 10 fetters, this gets divided into two. And what are those two? Anybody?
Is it bhava tanha?
Say again?
Is it bhava tanha?
The fetter of lust for existence is bhava tanha, but this gets divided into two in the list of the 10 fetters.
The form and formless.
Exactly, yeah. So it's rupa raga and arupa raga. Rupa raga is, the word lust doesn't work so well there. It's craving for form, which is understood as craving for existence in the realm of subtle form. And so within the Indian cosmology in the time of the Buddha, this would be the craving or desire for rebirth in the subtle form realm of existence, also called the Brahmaloka, the Brahma world. And then the other is the arupa raga, the craving for existence in the formless or non-material realm of existence. So this would be the desire for rebirth into the realm of boundless space, boundless consciousness, the base of nothingness, and the base of neither perception nor non-perception. So those are extremely, like, very subtle fetters. And so here we get this fetter of attachment to existence subdivided into two fetters. And then we have the fetter of ignorance is the same in the list of 7, the list of 10. So one item is missing, which we find amongst the 10 fetters. It's not in the 7 fetters and can't be derived from the 7 fetters, but it was added. And that is, I have to increase the size of this. Yeah, that is the fetter of restlessness.
Restlessness.
Yeah, so it's udacha or restlessness. Probably it was added to the list of fetters, first of all, because it is a fetter in its own right, but also maybe they were seeking a list of 10. Okay, so in this way, we have the 7 fetters in this sutta, then by breaking down the fetter of views into 2, the fetter of lust or attachment to existence into 2, we get 9. Then we add the fetter of restlessness, and in that way, we get the 10 fetters out of the 7. Okay, so the first sutta here just gives a list of the fetters, but then the next sutta makes an important point in relation to these 7 fetters. It says that the spiritual life, that is this brahmacharya, which here will be this noble eightfold path, is lived to abandon and eradicate the 7 fetters. And then he enumerates the 7 fetters. And then he says that when a bhikkhu, a monk, has abandoned the fetter of compliance, cut it off at the root, obliterated it, made it no more subject to future arising. When he's abandoned the fetter of aversion, et cetera, down to the fetter of ignorance, obliterated it, then he is called a monk who has cut off craving, stripped off the fetter, and by completely breaking through conceit, has made an end of suffering. Okay, so this is one list of the fetters. And now we have another list of 7 fetters. We'll take a look at this list. And so here, again, it opens by saying that we have these 7 fetters. So what are the 7? So we have compliance, aversion, views, doubt, conceit. And then in place of attachment to existence and ignorance, we have 2 other fetters, which often go together as a pair, the fetter of envy and the fetter of miserliness. And so envy is resenting the gains, the good qualities, the assets of others, particularly being envious when others receive praise, honor, awards, and so forth. And the fetter of miserliness is not being unwilling to share one's own goods, one's own benefits, one's own assets with others. And so these two, you could say, are almost like 2 sides of the same coin, a head side and a tail side, because they're both rooted in a kind of, almost you could say, in a kind of aversion. So envy stems from aversion towards the assets and benefits received by others, and miserliness arises from aversion towards sharing one's own assets, one's own benefits with others. And we find interestingly, when we come to the Abhidhamma text present us with 2 sets of 10 fetters. Let me see if I can find. Okay, it's staring me in the face. Okay, so in the Abhidhamma classification of the fetters, we have 2 groups of 10. One is following the sutta method. We have the 10 fetters, but it's not in the usual order. So here we have the fetter of sensual lust, attachment to fine material existence or subtle material existence, attachment to non-material existence, then aversion, conceit, then wrong views, which really is, in this case, it's just the view of self. Because separately we have adherence to rites and ceremonies, clinging to rules and ceremonies, and then doubt, restlessness, and ignorance. So this is the usual list, so somewhat in a different order. And then we have the 10 fetters following the Abhidhamma method, where we have sensual lust, attachment to existence. So here we have attachment to form sphere existence, formless sphere existence brought together simply as attachment to existence, then aversion, conceit, wrong views, adherence to rites and ceremonies, then doubt, and then envy and avarice introduced. But here we have ignorance, because here we we have all 10 fetters, but with envy and avarice introduced. So it's said in the Abhidhamma system that envy and avarice, actually was translated avarice here, I think it's better rendered as miserliness, since avarice suggests an extreme or very strong greed, whereas what it's intended is that unwillingness to share with others, being miserly or stingy. Okay, now I think we should look through all of these suttas before I take the questions. Okay, now we come to the next set of defilements, which actually turn out really to be the same as the 7 fetters, but here a different, maybe call this a different metaphor is introduced. And here it's translated as underlying tendencies. And the original term, the Pali term, is anusaya, which is from anu, again having the sense of along with, and saya is from a verb sati, meaning to lie down. So anusaya underscores that aspect of the defilements as things that lie along with the mind, that lie deep within the stream of the mind, the underlying current of the mind, and then pop up when we encounter the appropriate stimulation, things that provoke these defilements into activity. And so, for example, so sometimes anusia, actually I prefer now to translate latent tendency. So underlying is quite literal, but latent also brings up the aspect that it's something always present as a potentiality. And so you can see here we have the underlying tendency or latent tendency to sensual lust, but it's the same thing as compliance, then aversion, views, doubt, conceit, the attachment to existence, and the underlying tendency to ignorance. And then the same statement, I believe it's made about the underlying tendencies, that this brahmacharya, the spiritual life, is lived to abandon and eradicate the 7 underlying tendencies. And then when the monk has abandoned these 7 underlying tendencies, then he is called a monk without underlying tendencies, who has cut off craving, stripped off the fetter, and by breaking through conceit, has made an end of suffering. And what becomes an interesting sort of theoretical question or problem, sort of dealt with by some of the Buddhist commentaries, is the question never comes up in the suttas themselves, but when we're in a sort of calm mind and the anusayas are not active, where are they? Okay, so I'm just in a calm frame of mind, and then I come across maybe some sensually provocative image on the internet. Beautiful girl, picks up a picture, pops up maybe in an advertisement, beautiful girls in a bikini, or an advertisement for for food preparation, delicious food, and then the underlying tendency to sensual lust, sensual desire, the raga nusya pops up. But where was it when my mind was calm? Okay, then somebody says something rude to me, angry words, they speak angry words to me, and I feel angry towards them. So before I was calm, then that anger pops up. Where was the anger previously?
It's dormant, Bhante.
What
It's
is that?
dormant. It's sleep. It's dormant.
It's dormant. Okay, but the question is, where is it?
It is hiding in avidya, ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah. When I raise the question, it's not that I have the answer in my mind and that I'm sort of testing you.
Would it be just in the consciousness,
It's in the chitta.
Bhante?
It's in the
In the-
Bhavanga, Bhante.
Is it in
Or the
yeah, that is an interesting
Subconscious.
point, because you see, the defilements are always unwholesome, but in the Abhidhamma system, the Bhavanga is neutral. It's not wholesome, not unwholesome. So from that particular framework, we can say that the defilements are in the Bhavanga, but it seems to me, this is my own opinion, that maybe we have to say that the underlying tendencies or latent tendencies are in the Bhavanga, even though that particular system according to which the Bhavanga is a karmic result, so it's not wholesome, not unwholesome, just doesn't quite square. I think the way the tradition explains this, let me see if I could remember. It says that when the latent tendencies are not present, they are just, let me put that, they're present in the sense that they have not yet been abandoned, that they are not actually existent any place within the mind stream, but the person has not yet abandoned or eradicated the latent tendencies, and so they still have the potential to arise. And if I remember, I think this comes in the Visuddhimagga and some other commentaries, it's like, okay, we'll take the case of an apple tree. The apple tree is growing. It's still a young apple tree. It hasn't yet reached the point of bringing forth fruits. And so somebody can raise the question about the apple tree. Where are the apples? And if you say the defilements are in the Bhavanga, that would be saying like, well, then the apples must be present in the trunk of the tree, or they must be present in the branches, or in the leaves. But no, the apples aren't present anywhere, not in the trunk, not in the roots, not in the branches, not in the leaves. But when conditions are right, when the apple tree is mature enough, appropriate season, then the apple tree will bring forth the apples. And so when we encounter the stimulation, as long as the tendencies are not abandoned, when we encounter the appropriate stimulus, then the defilement will arise. I think I see some hands coming up. Okay, so Gita.
Thank you, Bhante, first of all, for teaching. It's so wonderful to be back in class with you. Thank you so much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Bhante, I have a question. So we all have underlying tendencies if what you just stated is in that direction. It's just that the causes and conditions, when they come up, it comes to maturity and then we see it. So the question is then, can we use yoniso manasikara, mindfulness, to become aware of it when it comes to the top or bubbles to the top before we react to it and recognize it, right, Bhante?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. You would use the mindfulness and clear comprehension to recognize the underlying tendency when it pops up, when it comes to the surface, and then you use some kind of reflection, yoniso manasikara, or any of the various methods to at least temporarily abandon the underlying tendencies.
Thank you, Bhante. It's a slow, long process. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, in fact, there's a distinction is made. I think this comes in the commentaries in different stages of the defilement. So one stage is the anusia, which is the latent or underlying stage. And then the other stage is called pariyutthana, which is the stage of, maybe we call this the stage of activation or mental obsession. And this is where the defilement moves up from the stage of latent tendency and becomes an active force in the mind. And that gives rise to it can give rise to still vitikama. Another stage, which is called vitikama, the stage of transgression. And this is where under the force, the impetus of this defilement that's popped up, one acts in a way that breaks any of the precepts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so somebody, say, has a latent tendency to sensual lust. He's attracted to maybe his friend's wife, and that attraction pops up and becomes obsessive in the mind. That's pariyutthana. But then he makes a pass at the friend's wife and they have relations together. So they break the precept. So that becomes vitikama. Okay, I see another hand raised, actually two more hands raised. So one is Deborah.
Yes, thank you, Bhante. Happy to be back. I was going to question the maybe not the location, but wondering if it exists because it hasn't been abandoned, the fetter. And that brought me to my original question, which was is it in the same way that one can crave for the realm of nothingness, which seems to be an oxymoron, but nothingness is still an existence? It's not.
I think there's a problem the way we translate that. The ayatana as nothingness, implying that there's just nothing there. And that isn't the case. I think the problem is translation, but I don't know how to get around this. It's just an extremely subtle, very, very, very subtle realm of existence. It doesn't mean that there's absolutely nothing there, but it's just so subtle that it's almost at the edge of what's possible to cognize with consciousness.
Yes, because then there's perception and neither perception nor non-perception.
Yeah.
So it's still, I guess I'm getting to the craving is still for existence, some form of existence, no matter how subtle or.
Yeah, the craving is still taking
just
some kind of existence.
Existence, yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, and then we have V.
Yes, good evening, Bhante.
It's actually
Yeah,
it's morning here.
I
Where
can
are
you
you?
hear me? Can you
You
hear
said
me,
good
Bhante?
evening.
Yeah.
Good evening. Where are you?
Oh, I'm in Hong Kong.
Oh, Hong Kong. I see. Okay, it's morning here in America.
Yeah, yeah. I have what is the Anusaya versus the Vasana, the Xi Qi? Are they very close? Because recently I have this encounter. I was in an airport. Not I don't like to mention the name of the airport. So when I was here at the airport, I saw a group of Bengali, and I was having I'm taking some hot water from a water dispenser,
Yeah,
and they all were queuing up beside me, but they start washing their hand using the cold water at the water dispenser.
yeah,
So I flared up. I told them, if you want to wash your hand, you need to go to the toilet.
yeah.
Because normally I won't raise my voice, but
Yeah,
all of a sudden I got really mad. So
yeah,
I told all of them off. I say, you need to go to the toilet to wash your hand.
yeah.
So it seems that this has just flared up from this anusaya. It's a latent tendency that really got mad.
Yeah, that would
So
be Anusia coming to the stage of Pariyutthana. And maybe when you speak a bit angrily, that becomes a Viti Kamma.
I think so, yes. So, because all along it's been very calm, but all of a sudden when it has been provoked,
Yeah,
so you just have to speak up, because I think it's not right to wash the hand
yeah, I mean,
at a
definitely.
water dispenser.
Yeah,
And they all were just queuing up to wash their hands. So I was a bit worried
yeah.
for hygiene reason.
Okay. Yeah, so that would
So,
be,
how do I, as a person, to tackle this kind of anusaya? Because I can't stay calm at
yeah,
this
I think
instance. It
it's
just
right. Sometimes you have to speak up and tell people, but doing so politely without without having anger behind as a motivation.
it's very tough.
Wait, somebody?
It
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
flare up.
Yeah, you don't have water fountains.
We have faucets using which we could get things out, but
Yeah.
we don't have water fountains from which you get water. So when they saw it, they didn't know whether to get water or to wash their hands.
Yeah.
So if I was in her shoes, I would have understood and I would have said, hey, you should be doing this, then that's where you need to go, right?
Yeah,
But she did not know. For her, it was like, why are you doing this?
yeah.
So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, but I would think that if they're traveling in an airport, that they should know that in the bathroom that there are the sinks with the water.
You expect that, but not. And again, I learned it the hard way as well with some of my experiences too.
Yeah.
So that's there, but the way she articulated is, how to track the flare from and how to.
Yeah. Okay, I think we should get back to the Dhamma rather than to the conventions regarding water dispensers. Yeah, so just what I would say, V, is that one keeps sort of the anger under control, but certainly if you see people doing things that sort of will infringe upon hygienic conventions, that you should speak up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I have this question. Is vasana the same as anusaya?
Is what?
Vasana.
Oh, vasana. Yeah, the idea of vasana comes in, it gets introduced in a later stage in the commentaries to explain how arahats sometimes have different behavioral patterns that stem from the stage before their attainments. So it's like a particular habit formations that continue after they attain arhatship, but they still have those habit formations, like particular ways of speaking, walking, conducting themselves. So there was I remember the discussion comes in relation to a Brahmin is speaking in a rather arrogant way to he's a Brahmin who's become a monk and an arhat, and he's speaking in a somewhat arrogant way to some of the other monks. And then the Buddha has declared that Brahmin monk to be an arhat, and the other monks complain, how come he's an arhat, but he's speaking in a way that seems arrogant? And then the Buddha explains that in 500 past births, he was like a high caste Brahmin, and that was just his habit. But it doesn't mean that now, after reaching arhatship, he has arrogance. He's gotten rid of arrogance, but it's just that vasana, that habit formation of speaking in such a way that remains. And so
Okay,
vasana is sort of our particular habit formations, that some of them might be due to defilements, others might be due to good actions, which then leave imprints on the mind so that we behave in certain ways.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante. I have no further question.
Okay, and now we have Luke. Go ahead. You have to unmute. That's it.
Thank you, Bhante. So going back to Fetters, with regards to what the Buddha mentions regarding Rahula as a feather, how would that be characterized and how to approach this this feather?
I didn't catch which feather was that?
I don't think it's listed under the 7 fetters, but the fact that the Buddha named his son Rahula.
Yeah.
So, you know, considering Rahula as a feather, that sort of bond him to the worry.
Yeah, the word Rahula, I've seen people translate it as fetter. I just don't see how one derives the meaning of fetter from Rahula, from the word Rahula. But it's a different word from the word that we're concerned with here, which is samyojana. Yeah, I'm not sure that I got the point. What was the point of the question?
The point is, how do you approach the bonds and all these attachment to your children?
I say to the children. I think it's important for parents to look after their children and to take care of them while they're still young, and once they grow up, to maintain the relationship with them. I mean, it's quite a natural part of everyday life. But
okay.
at a
Thank
certain
you,
point, one
Bhante.
has to be ready, I would say, to let one. I'm not the ideal person for giving advice about looking after children, since I don't have any. But when the children reach a level of maturity, then one has to let them live their own lives. One maintains a sort of friendly and warm relationship with them, but doesn't try to badger them and to nag them and to dominate them, but lets them live their own lives and make their own choices. Though, of course, if you think they're making wrong choices, one sort of gently tries to guide them and direct them away from the wrong choices towards better choices. Okay, we'll just have to look at some more questions quickly. Ashish? Okay, you're unmuted.
Yeah, Bhante. Just this question. See, if an arahant, won't an arahant have an idea about his own vasanas? I mean, he would have become an arahant knowing all of his vasanas, right? I mean, can he be ignorant of his vasanas?
Um,
I mean,
yeah,
if a non-arahant can,
yeah.
uh,
I don't know. It seems in certain cases, maybe that example about the Brahmin who was speaking in a demeaning way to the other monks, maybe that's an extreme example. I would think that somebody who's an arhat should be aware of that tendency towards arrogant speech. But other kinds of vasanas, maybe one is not so clearly aware of.
mhm. Okay.
Yeah, I just don't know. Because not that much is said in the text about the vasanas. So
Also, another question, a vasana is basically, even in Hindu texts, they talk about vasanas, right?
yeah, and even in common, I heard it very often in Sri Lanka in the sermons by the monks. They speak about the importance of establishing good vasanas, that is through good practices. So it's like developing certain wholesome tendencies, like especially when you practice giving or generosity, then you plant that vasana towards generosity. And so when you do any kind of good deeds, you create those habitual dispositions towards the good deeds. And so you have the good vasanas and as well as the bad vasanas.
Okay, okay, Bhante, thank you.
Okay, Rick.
Thank you, Bhante. I guess in looking at going back to the Abhidhamma a little bit and also the point of origin for some of these latent tendencies, wouldn't it be with the citta being all knowing, would it be the chittasikas that are conditioned to strike the citta in a certain way and respond accordingly?
Yeah, yeah.
So therefore, these latent tendencies would reside in the conditioning associated with the responses of the chittasikas striking the citta, right?
Yeah, well, you see what we call the latent tendencies. In fact, this is what is done in the Abhidhamma. Let me just get the text. You see, the different groups, like the Sangyojanas here, the latent tendencies, some of the other groups mentioned in the Abhidhamma, are regarded as different, sort of different aspects of a fixed group of mental factors, defiled mental factors. So here you can see this table. Whoops, now I've lost it. Okay, so this table, do you see it in the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the Abhidhamma reduces all of these defilements in the different groups, whether they're called taints, floods, bonds, knots, clinging hindrances, the dispositions of the latent tendencies, the fetters, other defilements. It reduces them all to 14 mental factors, 14 unwholesome chaitasikas. And so from the Abhidhamma perspective, these different terms used are just sort of, as I said, they're metaphors bringing out different ways in which these mental defilements function. So the taint or asava is something which asava flows into the mind. When the defilements are called floods, they're things which flood the mind. When they're called bonds, there's things that bind the mind. And then when they're called dispositions or latent tendencies, they're things that lie latent with the tendency to pop up from time to time. And when they're called fetters, then they're things that fetter the mind. Why certain defilements are put under certain categories, others are put into different categories. Sometimes we don't know the answer to that. It's just the way the Buddha expressed or formulated his teaching. Yeah, but the point you make is the point is that it's these chaitasikas which function as either latent tendencies or as fetters. And so what we're really have to deal with are these chaitasikas themselves. And when we weaken them and overcome them, then we're overcoming the fetters and latent tendencies.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, then we can take Vandana. Vandana.
Thank you, Bhante, for your teachings. So I was just clarifying that Rahul, the meaning which I know for so there in Hindu astrology, there's two shadow planets called Rahu Ketu. And people usually, when they see the chart, the Brahmins see the chart, they would say, oh, you have Rahu in your time, so don't do this. So Rahu meaning is like a negative way, and attachments and bondings and all that. And then I think Ketu is in a more positive way. So I think when the Rahula was about to be born or something, some ascetic, I think, might have said that it's going to be a born for Buddha. And then they put this name to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, you see, there's the word Rahu, it occurs in the Buddhist text. Rahu is supposed to be an asura, that's a kind of demon that swallows up the sun and the moon from time to time. And so obviously Rahu is then the sort of ancient way of conceiving the eclipse, the solar and lunar eclipse. So Rahu sometimes will swallow the moon, sometimes the sun, and then after a few hours, he releases the sun and the moon. And so maybe that's how the idea of Rahula as a fetter or bond developed. Okay, so I see another hand come up. This is Tim.
Yes, Bhante, something that is, maybe I've thought about it too much, that three fetters that I've read, that if we resolve those three, basically they're sort of put to rest. That is the formula for stream entry. Could you speak to that?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in the standard list of the 10 fetters, and for that, it would have to go, I think it's in the book of tens. Anyway, we get it I think probably most of you know the list of 10 fetters. So there we have the first three fetters are the fetter of the view of a self existing in the five aggregates, then the fetter of doubt, and then the fetter of clinging to rules and observances, sila bhatta paramasa. So in the standard list of 10 fetters, those come first. And when those are eradicated, eliminated, that marks the attainment of stream entry. And with the attainment of stream entry, then the removal of the other 10 fetters is guaranteed, but of course it will take time and can take multiple lives. Yeah, so that is the sort of the starting point in the elimination of the fetters, is the eradication of the first three fetters.
Thank you, Bhante. But one additional concept is that stream entry means that there's a limited number of reincarnations before liberation.
Yeah. With the attainment of stream entry, then it's said that there's a maximum of 7 more existences. So, of course, somebody who attains stream entry can then continue with the practice and then cut down the number of future existences. Yeah, but the attainment of stream entry marks the point where final liberation is guaranteed in a maximum of 7 more existences.
All right. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah, okay, Jia, I see the hand has come up.
Thank you, Bhante, for teaching. I have a question regarding to Silabata Maramasa.
Yeah.
I'm wondering this ritual and rites, what they refer to, is that the perform like a ceremony or is precept? Is this an extreme attachment? Because we usually are doing that in order to cultivate.
Yeah. I think what this is referring to, it's referring to practices that were common during the Buddha's time, particularly on the one side amongst the Brahmins, and then on the other side amongst some of the Samana groups. So amongst the Brahmins, it would probably be performing the Vedic rituals, with the idea that performing these particular rituals, like going to the river Ganges or other sacred rivers to bathe, with the idea that by bathing in the sacred river, you wash off all of your bad karma and thereby gain liberation. Or by going to pilgrimage sites, you gain the merits that will bring liberation. So that would be on the Brahminic side. And then on the side of the Samanas, it would be the idea that by performing some of these extreme ascetic practices, like fasting for days and days on end, bathing in extremely cold water, exposing one's body to the heat of the sun in the middle of the day. With one of the practices is to have 4 fires burning at each of the directions, to stand in the middle, exposing oneself to the sun above, 4 fires around. In that way, you sort of weaken the bonds that keep one in bondage to samsara. Or you sleep on beds of thorns, or you undertake the practice behaving like an animal. There's the dog practice, where you go on all 4s and bark like a dog, or the cow practice. Also, you go on all 4s and what does a cow do? Moo, you moo like a cow. Yeah, so and that was considered to be the path to liberation, the path to purification. And so the Buddha rejected like all of those practices, many of which he tried, but then found to be useless.
Now I understand. Actually, this is Chinese translation. It's non-Buddhist practice.
The Chinese translation is what?
It's non-Buddhist. It's called Wai Dao. It's like
Wai Dao, yeah. So it's always referring to those non-Buddhist practices. And so, but we can also apply it to Buddhism. I don't think we're exempt from that. If you just, I've heard these, you get sprinkled with the holy water, and you do recite the name of the Buddha so many times that this is going to guarantee rebirth into the Pure Land. Of course, when you do this, according from the Buddhist perspective. You're supposed to do these practices with mindfulness and with clear comprehension, and then they become means of strengthening one's faith, devotion, and understanding, and then they become beneficial. But if you just undertake the ritualistic practice with the idea that this is sufficient, then it becomes a kind of sila bhatta paramasa.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, Catherine?
Thank you, Bhante, for your teaching. Bhante, just now, Tim mentioned the stream entry. That brought a question of mine. According to Diamond Sutra, so from stream entry to Arahant, there are several levels. So these levels, they can skip directly to Arahant, or it has to follow level 1, level 2, level 3, and Arahant level 4. Because level 3 said, if you reach the level 3, you will not come back. But we know, like, for example, Ananda achieved Arahant after Buddha went to Nirvana. So is there a conflict here? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, so if we read the suttas, sometimes it says, even there's a case of an ascetic named Bahira who met the Buddha, and then the Buddha gave him a very short discourse, and it just says that Bahira achieved arahatship right on the spot. It doesn't mention him going through stages of stream entry, once returning, non-returning. So if you read the sutta, it seems that you could go to any of the higher stages without having to go through the lower stages. But the way the commentary explains this is that what actually happens is that you go through each of the stages very, very quickly, just like kind of boom, 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 and then you reach the higher stage. Yeah, so I don't know which is which, but it depends on how you read it. If you read it from a sutta perspective, it seems that you could go to a higher stage without having to pass through each lower stage. If you look at it from the Abhidhamma commentarial perspective, when you reach a higher stage in a sudden attainment, you're actually going very quickly through the lower stages, just in a matter of seconds.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, we'll take one more question, then we'll have to end. This is Yenny.
Thank you for the teaching, Bhante. I have a question, like in the certain meditation practice, right? There is a belief that you can bring past karma and burn it when you do the meditation, especially the bad karma. When you're explaining the pariyutthana and then it moves to the vitikama, I can see how it relates.
Wait. You're going so quickly. Slow down. Go over a little more slowly.
Okay, so okay, maybe I paraphrase this again. When you're explaining about the pariyutthana, like how it moves to vitikama, and then it just like brings a question in my mind that in a certain meditation practice, the one that I practice, there is a belief that we can bring the past karma and then burn it during the meditation, especially the bad karma. You know, that's why we experience the pain and all. So what is your opinion on that?
That we can burn up the past karma, is that what you said?
The past karma during the meditation.
That we burn it up in the meditation?
Uh-huh.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Burning it up. Getting rid of it.
Yes.
I don't know, actually. I'd say that meditation, maybe it creates strong, wholesome karma that might weaken strong bad karma from the past. So when that bad karma ripens, it ripens in a weaker way, or maybe it doesn't ripen at all. But I don't know whether it can completely eliminate all bad karma, because even the Buddha had to experience the result of bad karma from an much earlier life. Even Moggallana had to experience, Sariputta had to experience. Yeah, so I don't think it completely eliminates, but it can create in some cases, a cushion that will weaken the impact of the bad karma, and in some cases, eliminate it.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're going to have to end for the day now. And so we'll be ending with the dedication or sharing of the merits. So I'll recite the verses for the sharing of the merits. So we share the merits with the Dharma protecting devas, the nagas, and then with all beings. Akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahidika panyanta manumoditva chirangra kantu sasanam. Akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantam anumoditva chirangra kantu desanam. Akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantam anumoditva chirangra kantu mang parang. Dukkha pata chani dukkha baya pata chani baya soka pata chani soka antu sabe pipanino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. And then we'll be doing 3 bows to the Buddha. And so we could stand up. Okay, first bow. Second bow. Third bow.
Bow to Bhante.
Okay,
And a bow to Bhante Bodhi. Thank you, Bhante
Thank you,
Bodhi.
Bhante.
Sadhu,
Thank you,
sadhu,
Bhante.
sadhu.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante
Good to see you
Bodhi.
again.
Thank you, Bhante.
Enjoy the lunch,
Thank you,
Bhante.
Bhante.
Thank you,
Sadhu,
Bhante.
sadhu,
Thank you,
Bhante.
Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Good health
Take care of
to
your
you.
health, Bhante.
To
See you
all.
on Wednesday.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Looking well.
Bhante.
Thank you very much,
Good
Bhante.
night. Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Sadhu.
Yeah, Bhante. Bye.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye,
Okay, so I'm
Bhante.
going to